What if everything you think you know about the world's richest man is wrong? After 24 years of silence, Justine Musk is about to break the most important promise she ever made. In an exclusive interview, Elon Musk's first wife reveals the childhood trauma that shaped every decision he's ever made, from Tesla to SpaceX to his obsession with Mars. The secret she's kept isn't just about their marriage. It's about why a 7-year-old boy's survival plan became a $200 billion space program. It's about why the man trying to save humanity is actually running away from his own past. And it's about what Elon is really planning to do on Mars that will shock the world. This isn't the inspiring story of a visionary entrepreneur you think you know. This is the heartbreaking truth about a scared little boy who never learned to heal, and the family he's planning to abandon forever. The rain was falling in Los Angeles when Justine Musk's phone rang with the call that would change everything. The rain drummed against the windows of Justine Musk's home office, like tiny fingers tapping for attention. She sat at her wooden desk, watching the water streak down the glass. Outside, the palm trees of Los Angeles swayed in the March wind. It was Tuesday morning, and she had planned to spend the day writing her new book. Her phone buzzed. The screen showed an unknown number with a New York area code. Justine almost didn't answer. She got lots of calls from reporters these days, all wanting to talk about her famous ex-husband. Most of the time, she said no, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Mrs. Musk? This is Sarah Chen from The Atlantic magazine." The woman's voice was professional but nervous. "I hope I'm not bothering you." Justine set down her coffee cup. The Atlantic was serious, not like the gossip magazines that usually called her. "What can I do for you, Miss Chen?" "I'm working on a story about your ex-husband, about Elon, and I've heard some things from people in Silicon Valley, things that don't match up with his public image." Justine's heart started beating faster. She gripped the phone tighter. "I'm not sure what you mean." Sarah's voice dropped lower, as if she was worried someone might hear her. "Mrs. Musk, 3 different sources have told me the same thing. They say there's something about your marriage to Elon that the public has never known. Something big, something that explains everything about who he really is." The room suddenly felt cold. Justine stood up and walked to the window. The rain was coming down harder now. She could see her reflection in the glass. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes that held too many secrets. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice shook. "One source told me it has to do with his childhood in South Africa. Another said it explains why he's so desperate to get to Mars. The third person, someone who worked at Tesla for 10 years, said if people knew the truth they would understand that everything Elon does comes from a place of deep pain." Justine closed her eyes. 20 years. She had kept this secret for 20 years. Through their marriage, through their ugly divorce, through watching him become the richest man in the world. Through all of it, she had never said a word. "Mrs. Musk, are you still there?" "I'm here." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I know this might be hard to talk about, but people deserve to know the truth about someone who has so much power over our future. Elon Musk isn't just a businessman anymore. He's shaping how we think about space, about cars, about technology. If there's something that drives him that we don't understand." Justine opened her eyes and looked at her bookshelf. Behind the row of novels, hidden where no one would think to look, was a small wooden box. She hadn't opened it in 15 years. Inside were letters written in a child's handwriting. Letters that could change how the world saw Elon Musk forever. She thought about her 5 sons, about how they deserved to understand their father. She thought about all the people who worked for Elon's companies, who didn't know they were part of someone else's desperate attempt to heal old wounds. Then she thought about last week. She had seen Elon on the news, standing in front of a giant rocket, talking about making humans a multi-planetary species. His eyes had been bright with excitement, but Justine could see something else there. Something the cameras couldn't catch. The same look he'd had on their wedding night when he told her things he'd never told another soul. The look of a person running away. "Miss Chen," Justine said, her voice stronger now. "I need to think about this." "Of course. I understand this is..." "No, you don't understand." Justine turned away from the window. "You don't understand at all. But maybe it's time someone did." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Does that mean you'll talk to me?" Justine walked to her bookshelf. She reached behind the books and touched the wooden box. It was warm, as if it had been waiting for her. "I'll meet with you," she said. "But not here, and not over the phone. Meet me at the Griffith Observatory tomorrow at sunset." "Do you know where that is? The observatory in Los Angeles?" "Yes. I can be there. Come alone. No cameras, no recording equipment that I can see. Just you and me." "I understand." "Miss Chen?" "Yes. Bring a notepad, you're gonna want to write this down." After Justine hung up, she sat in her chair for a long time. The rain kept falling. The palm trees kept swaying. But something had changed in the room. A secret that had lived in the shadows for 2 decades was about to step into the light. She thought about Elon, probably in some meeting right now, making plans to change the world. He had no idea that his first wife was about to tell the story he had begged her never to tell. The story that explained everything. Justine pulled the wooden box from behind the books. It was cedar, worn smooth from years of hiding. She had made Elon a promise on their wedding night. She had sworn never to tell anyone about what he had shared with her in their hotel room in Napa Valley all those years ago. But promises could be broken, especially when keeping them meant watching someone you once loved disappear completely into a lie. She opened the box just a crack. Inside, she could see the edge of a letter written in blue crayon. The handwriting was shaky, like a child's first attempts at cursive. At the top of the page, she could make out 2 words, "Dear Kimball." Justine closed the box quickly. Tomorrow, she would open it fully. Tomorrow, she would break her promise. Tomorrow, the world would learn the truth about the boy who became Elon Musk. And maybe, just maybe, that boy might finally find a way to come home. Outside, the rain began to slow. The storm was ending, but Justine knew that for Elon Musk, the real storm was just beginning. She picked up her phone and typed a text message, "Observatory tomorrow. Sunset. Come alone." She stared at the message for a long time before hitting send. Then she sat back in her chair, holding the wooden box, and waited for tomorrow to come. Sarah Chen arrived at Griffith Observatory 30 minutes early. She had never been this nervous about an interview. Her hands shook as she parked her rental car in the lot below the famous white building. The observatory sat on Mount Hollywood like a crown, looking out over all of Los Angeles. She had flown from New York that morning, her mind racing with questions. What secret could be so big that it explained everything about Elon Musk? What had happened in his marriage that no one knew about? Sarah had been a reporter for 15 years, but this felt different. This felt like the story that could define her career. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Tourists walked around the observatory, taking pictures and pointing at the city below. Sarah found a quiet bench near the main building and waited. At exactly sunset, she saw Justine Musk walking up the path. Sarah had seen photos of Justine before, but the woman approaching her looked different. Older than her pictures, but not in a bad way. She looked like someone who had lived through hard things and come out wiser. Her dark hair was pulled back simply and she wore jeans and a sweater. She carried a small wooden box under her arm. "Miss Chen." Justine's voice was soft but steady. "Yes, thank you for meeting me." Sarah stood up and shook Justine's hand. "I really appreciate this." Justine looked around at the tourists. "Let's walk. I know a place where we can talk without being heard." They walked along a path that led away from the main building. The city spread out below them like a blanket of lights. Sarah could see the Hollywood sign in the distance, and beyond that, the ocean. "Do you know why I picked this place?" Justine asked as they walked. "No. This is where Elon proposed to me. March 15th, 2000. Right over there, by that telescope." Justine pointed to a spot near the edge of the hill. "He said he wanted to propose somewhere that looked at the stars. He said we would reach them together someday." Sarah pulled out her notepad. "Did you believe him?" Justine was quiet for a moment. "I believed he believed it. That was enough then." They found a bench hidden behind some trees, away from the crowds. The lights of Los Angeles twinkled below them like fallen stars. Justine sat down and placed the wooden box on her lap. "Before I tell you anything," Justine said, "I need you to understand something. What I'm about to share with you, it's not gossip. It's not meant to hurt anyone. It's the truth about someone who has become very powerful, and people have a right to know what drives that power." Sarah nodded. "I understand. Do you? Because once I tell you this story, you can't unknow it. Every time you see Elon on TV, every time you read about his companies, every time someone talks about going to Mars, you'll see it all differently. Sarah looked at the wooden box. What's in there? Letters. Written by a 7-year-old boy in South Africa. A boy who was so hurt, so broken, that he decided to become someone else entirely. Justine opened the box slowly. Inside, Sarah could see old papers, yellowed with age. Some were folded, some were torn. All of them looked like they had been handled many times over the years. You want to know the real Elon Musk? Justine asked. The man behind Tesla, SpaceX, and all those grand dreams about saving humanity? Then you need to understand what happened to him when he was 7 years old. Something that shaped every single thing he would do for the rest of his life. Sarah's pen was ready. What happened? He was tortured. Not just bullied like the stories say, actually tortured by a group of older boys at his school in Pretoria. They called themselves the Pack. And what they did to that little boy, Justine's voice broke. What they did created the person the world knows today. Sarah felt chills run down her arms. How do you know this? Because he told me, once. On our wedding night, right here in Los Angeles, he made me promise never to tell anyone. While he was alive. While he was alive, Justine looked out at the city lights. That's the thing, Ms. Chen. The boy who told me that story, the person I married, he's not alive anymore. The real Elon Musk died somewhere along the way. What's left is just a character he created to survive. She pulled out one of the letters from the box. The paper was fragile, and Sarah could see it was written in blue crayon with a child's shaky handwriting. These letters were written to his brother Kimball. Elon's mother, May, gave them to me after our divorce. She said someone should know who he really was before he became who he is now. Sarah leaned forward. What do they say? They tell the story of a little boy being broken, piece by piece. And they show the exact moment when he decided to stop being that boy and become something else, something stronger, something that could never be hurt again. Justine held the letter carefully, like it might crumble in her hands. But here's what the public doesn't understand. Every rocket launch, every electric car, every tweet, every wild plan to change the world, it's all coming from that scared 7-year-old boy who's still trying to prove he's not weak. Is that why he wants to go to Mars? Justine's laugh was sad. Oh, Miss Chen. Mars isn't about saving humanity. Mars is about running away. It's about finding a place where no one knows his story, where no one can hurt him. Sarah wrote as fast as she could, but her hand could barely keep up with the words spilling out of Justine. The man the world sees as a hero, a genius, a visionary, he's actually the most successful runaway in human history. The sky was getting darker now. The first real stars were beginning to show above the city lights. Sarah looked up at them and thought about everything Justine was telling her. Why are you telling me this now? Sarah asked. After all these years? Justine was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that made Sarah's blood run cold. Because he's planning to leave Earth forever. And he's not planning to come back. Sarah's pen stopped moving. What do you mean he's not planning to come back? Justine looked down at the wooden box in her lap. Let me show you something first. Then you'll understand. She pulled out a letter from the top of the pile. The paper was yellow and worn, with tears along the edges. In the corner, written in purple ink, was a date. September. Elon was 7 when he wrote this, Justine said. Read it. Sarah took the letter carefully. The handwriting was shaky, like a child just learning to write in cursive. Some words were spelled wrong. Others were crossed out and written again. Dear Kimball, school was bad again today. The pack found me at lunch. They made me eat my sandwich off the floor. Then they made me eat dirt from the playground. They said I'm too weird to be human. They said I must be from another planet. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should become something else. Something stronger. I hate Earth. Love. Elon. Sarah's hands trembled as she read. He was just 7 years old. That's one of the mild ones, Justine said. She pulled out another letter, this one dated October 3rd. Dear Kimball, they locked me in the school basement today. For 3 whole hours. I banged on the door but no one came. It was so dark I couldn't see my hands. I thought I was going to die down there. I made a promise to myself in the dark. I will never be powerless again. I will become so strong that no one can ever hurt me. I will make myself into something they can't touch. When I get out of here, I'm going to build rockets and fly away from all of them. Love, Elon. Sarah looked up at Justine. The pack? Who were they? A group of older boys at his school in Pretoria. They were around 12 or 13. Elon was small for his age. Quiet. Always reading books about space. They picked on him because he was different. Justine took out more letters. There were dozens of them, all written to his older brother Kimball, who was away at a different school. But it wasn't just normal bullying, Justine continued. What they did was systematic, planned. They would corner him every day and find new ways to break him down. She handed Sarah another letter from November. Dear Kimball, today they carved something into my back with Jimmy's compass. They wrote the word alien, so everyone would know what I am. It hurt so much I cried. They laughed when I cried. But you know what? They're right. I am an alien. And someday I'm going to go back to where aliens come from. I'm going to build a rocket ship and fly to Mars where people like me belong. I'm never coming back to Earth. Love, Elon. Sarah felt sick. A 7-year-old boy wrote this. His mother found him in his room that night, bleeding. She took him to the hospital for stitches, but she never reported it to the school. Back then in South Africa, boys were expected to fight their own battles. Justine's voice was heavy with sadness. So Elon learned to fight his battles inside his own mind. He started creating a new version of himself. Someone who couldn't be hurt. She showed Sarah another letter. This one from December. Dear Kimball, I figured it out. The reason they hurt me is because I'm still acting like the old Elon, the weak Elon. But I don't have to be him anymore. I'm going to pretend to be someone else. Someone brave and smart and strong. I'm going to practice being this new person every day until everyone believes it. Even me. The old Elon is going to disappear, and the new Elon will never let anyone hurt him again. Love, new Elon. Sarah stared at the letter. He was creating a persona at 7 years old. That's exactly what he was doing. And you know what the scariest part is? It worked. He became so good at pretending to be strong that he forgot he was pretending. Justin pulled out the last letter from the pile. This one was different. The handwriting was neater, more controlled. It was dated March 9th. Dear Kimball, I don't need to write to you anymore. The new Elon doesn't need help from anyone. The pack still tries to hurt me, but it doesn't work now. When they push me, I don't cry. When they call me names, I just think about my rockets and my plan to leave this planet. Someday I'm going to be so powerful that I can make them all disappear. Or better yet, I'll disappear from them. I'll go to Mars and build a new world where people like me are in charge. This is my last letter. The old Elon who wrote all those scared letters is gone now. He died in that basement. What's left is someone who will never be weak again. Love, Elon, the strong one. Sarah set the letter down with shaking hands. When did his mother give you these? Right after our divorce was final in 2008. She came to my house with this box. She was crying. She said, I thought you should know who he really was before he became who he is now. Did she know what had happened to him? She knew some of it. But Elon never told her the worst parts. He was protecting her. Even at 7, he was already learning to carry his pain alone. Justine looked out at the city lights below them. May said something that still haunts me. She said, I lost my little boy that year. What came back was someone else wearing his face. Sarah was writing frantically, trying to capture every word. How do these letters explain everything he's done since? Don't you see? Every company he's built, every rocket he's launched, every bold statement he's made, it's all coming from that 7-year-old boy's plan. He's still trying to become so powerful that no one can hurt him. He's still planning his escape to Mars. Justine carefully put the letters back in the box. The difference is, now he has the money and technology to actually do it. The scared little boy's fantasy is about to become real. And you think he's really planning to leave Earth forever? I don't think it, Neschen. I know it, because he told me exactly how he was going to do it. The stars were fully visible now above Los Angeles. Sarah looked up at them and wondered which one might be Mars. Somewhere up there was a red planet that a broken 7-year-old boy saw as home. "When did he tell you his plan?" Sarah asked. Justine smiled sadly. "On our wedding night, January 15th, 2000. Right after he made me promise to never tell anyone about these letters. He told me something that made me realize I wasn't just marrying a man. I was marrying someone's escape plan." She stood up from the bench, holding the wooden box close to her chest. "That's a story for tomorrow, Miss Chen. Meet me back here at the same time, and bring more paper. You're going to need it." Sarah arrived at Griffith Observatory the next evening with 3 notepads and 2 pens. She had barely slept the night before. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those letters written in a child's shaky handwriting. The words, "I hate Earth," kept echoing in her mind. Justine was already waiting at the same bench, the wooden box beside her. She looked tired, like telling yesterday's story had drained something from her. "You came back," Justine said as Sarah sat down. "I had to. I need to understand how a 7-year-old boy's trauma led to SpaceX and Tesla. And Mars. Especially Mars." Justine nodded. "Then I need to take you back to January 15th, 2000. Our wedding night. We were staying at the Auberge du Soleil in Napa Valley. It was this beautiful resort with views of the vineyards. Everything was perfect." She paused, looking out at the city lights below them. "We had just gotten married that afternoon. Small ceremony. Just close family and friends. Elon was 28 then. Still building his first companies. X.com was doing well. But he wasn't famous yet. He was just this brilliant, intense young man who talked about changing the world." Sarah's pen was ready. "What happened that night? We were in our hotel room. I was happy, excited about our future together. But Elon seemed nervous, really nervous. He kept pacing around the room, looking out the window at the stars." Justine pulled her sweater tighter around herself. The night air was getting cold. Finally, around midnight, he sat down on the bed next to me. His hands were shaking. He said, "Justine, I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone else. But if we're going to be married, you need to know who you really married." Did you know what he was going to tell you? I had no idea. I thought maybe he was going to talk about his business plans or his family. I never expected. Justine's voice trailed off. She opened the wooden box and touched one of the letters gently. "He told me about South Africa first. About the pack. About being locked in that basement. He showed me the scar on his back where they had carved the word alien into his skin with a compass." Sarah felt the same chill she had felt reading the letters. "He still had the scar?" "He still has it. It never went away completely. But that wasn't the worst part of what he told me." Justine took a deep breath before continuing. He said, "Justine, I need you to understand something. The person you think you married doesn't really exist. I created him to survive. Everything about me, my confidence, my vision, my big dreams. It's all a character I built to protect a scared little boy." Sarah wrote frantically. "He actually said that. Word for word. I'll never forget it. Then he said something that broke my heart. He said, 'I'm so good at being this character that sometimes I forget I'm pretending. But late at night, when I'm alone, that 7-year-old boy comes back, and he's still terrified.'" Justine wiped away a tear that had started rolling down her cheek. "I tried to comfort him. I told him that everyone has difficult childhoods, that he had overcome it, that he was strong now, but he just shook his head." "What did he say?" "He said, 'You don't understand. I didn't overcome anything. I just learned to hide from it. Every company I build, every rocket I design, every bold thing I say in public, it's all part of my escape plan. I'm still that little boy trying to run away from the pack." Sarah looked up from her notepad. "Escape plan? That's when he told me about Mars. But not the way he talks about it in public. Not about saving humanity or becoming a multiplanetary species. He told me the real reason." Justine stood up and walked to the edge of the hill. The lights of Los Angeles stretched out below them like a galaxy of stars. He said Mars was his safe place. A planet where no one would know his story, where there would be no pack to fear, where he could finally drop the mask and just be himself. Did he have a specific plan? Oh yes. Even then, in 2000, he had it all figured out. He was going to build the technology to get to Mars. He was going to make enough money to fund the whole project himself. And then he was going to leave. Sarah felt her heart racing. Leave forever? That's what scared me most. He wasn't talking about visiting Mars or setting up a colony and coming back. He was talking about going there to die. He said Earth is where the pain happened. Mars will be where it ends. Justine turned back to face Sarah. I asked him if he was planning to commit suicide. He said no, nothing like that. He just wanted to live out his life on a planet where he felt safe. Where he could be the person he really was instead of the character he had created. What did you say to him? I told him I loved him. The real him, not the character. I promised I would help him heal instead of run away. I thought love could fix everything. Justine's laugh was bitter. I was so naive. I didn't understand that some wounds go too deep to heal. That some people are so broken that they can only survive by becoming someone else. Sarah looked down at her notes. The story was bigger than she had imagined. Did he make you promise to keep this secret? That came later in the conversation. After he showed me the letters his mother had given him. The same ones I showed you yesterday. He had kept them all those years as a reminder. A reminder of what? Of who he really was underneath all the success. He said reading them kept him motivated. Every time he felt like giving up on his Mars plan, he would read those letters and remember why he needed to escape. Justine sat back down on the bench. Then he made me swear on our marriage that I would never tell anyone about his childhood trauma or his real plan for Mars. He said if his enemies in business knew how broken he really was, they would use it to destroy him. Did you agree? I loved him. Of course I agreed. But I made him promise something too. What? That he would try therapy first. That he would give healing a chance before running away to Mars. Sarah could see where this was heading. He didn't keep that promise. For a while I thought he might. The early years of our marriage, he seemed happier. More grounded. We had our children. He was building his companies but not working insane hours yet. I thought maybe love really could fix him. Justine's voice grew sad. But then the companies got bigger. The pressure got worse. And slowly, the character started taking over completely. The real Elon, the vulnerable, scared person I had married, started disappearing. When did you realize he was never going to heal? 2008. When both Tesla and SpaceX almost failed, I watched him have a complete breakdown. But instead of getting help, instead of dealing with his trauma, he just built the characters stronger, worked more hours, made bolder claims, pushed himself harder. Justine looked directly at Sarah. That's when I knew I had lost him. Not to another woman or to his work. I lost him to his own survival mechanism. The character had won. The observatory was closing. Security guards were asking the last tourist to leave. Sarah and Justine gathered their things and started walking toward the parking lot. There's more to this story, Justine said as they reached Sarah's car. About what happened during our divorce. About what I discovered he was really planning. About why I finally decided to break my promise. She handed Sarah a piece of paper. That's my address. Come to my house tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. And Sarah? Yes? What I tell you tomorrow will change everything you think you know about Elon Musk's real mission to Mars. Sarah pulled into the driveway of Justine's house in Bel Air at exactly 10 o'clock the next morning. The house was beautiful but not flashy. A white two-story home with large windows and a garden full of California flowers. It looked like a place where someone might actually live, not just show off their wealth. Justine answered the door wearing jeans and a simple blue shirt. She looked more relaxed than she had at the observatory, but Sarah could see tiredness in her eyes. Come in, Justine said. I made coffee. The house felt warm and lived in. There were books everywhere, family photos on the walls, and toys scattered around from visiting grandchildren. It was nothing like the cold, modern spaces Sarah had seen in magazines about tech billionaires. They sat in Justine's kitchen at a wooden table by a large window. Outside, Sarah could see a small pool and more flowers. It was peaceful, quiet. I've been thinking about what to tell you next, Justine said, pouring coffee into 2 blue mugs. I want you to understand what it was like being married to someone who was slowly disappearing into a character he had created. Sarah opened her notepad. How long were you married? 8 years. 2000 to 2008. But I think I only really knew the real Elon for maybe the first 2 years. After that, the mask started taking over. Justine sat down across from Sarah and wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. In the beginning, there were moments when he would let his guard down. Times when the scared little boy would peek through. Usually late at night, when he couldn't sleep. What would happen? He would have nightmares. About being trapped in that basement. About the pack finding him. He would wake up sweating and shaking. Sometimes he would cry. Justine's voice was soft. Remembering, those were the moments when I felt closest to him. When he wasn't being the confident CEO or the brilliant inventor. When he was just Elon, hurting and afraid and needing comfort. Did he talk about his childhood then? Sometimes. He would tell me more details about what the pack did to him, things that weren't in the letters, things that were too painful for a 7-year-old to write down. Sarah waited for Justine to continue. They didn't just hurt him physically, they broke him down mentally too. They would tell him he was worthless, that no one would ever love him, that he would never amount to anything. They convinced him that he was fundamentally different from other people. Broke. Justine took a sip of coffee. The worst part was that some of it came from his own father too. Errol was not a kind man. He would tell Elon he was weak, that he needed to toughen up. So Elon learned that showing vulnerability meant getting hurt. How did this affect your marriage? It meant I was married to someone who couldn't really love me. Oh, he tried. He wanted to. But every time he started to feel close to someone, that scared little boy would panic. Getting close meant being vulnerable. Being vulnerable meant getting hurt. Justine stood up and walked to the window. So he would pull away. Work longer hours. Focus on his companies instead of our relationship. The more successful he became, the safer he felt. But the safer he felt, the more he disappeared into that character. When did you start losing him? Gradually. Then all at once. Around 2003, PayPal was sold to eBay for $1.5 billion. Elon made $165 million from that sale. Suddenly, he had enough money to start making his childhood dreams real. Sarah wrote quickly, Tesla and SpaceX. Exactly. But you have to understand, these weren't just business ventures for him. They were therapy. Every electric car was proof he could change the world. Every rocket launch was practice for his escape to Mars. Justine turned back from the window. The problem was, the more he focused on these companies, the less he focused on healing. Work became his drug, his way of not thinking about the pain. How many hours was he working? 18, 20 hours a day sometimes. He would sleep at the factory, skip meals. I would find him passed out at his desk. Justine's voice grew frustrated. I tried to talk to him about it. I would say, Elon, you're gonna burn out. You need to rest. You need to deal with your trauma. But he couldn't hear me. What would he say? He would say he was fine, that he was just working hard to change the world. But I knew the truth. He wasn't working to change the world. He was working to prove to that 7-year-old boy that he was safe now. Justine sat back down at the table. The really sad part was watching him read comments about himself online. Every negative comment, every criticism, every joke about him on social media. It all went straight to that wounded child inside him. He read everything people said about him. Everything. For hours. He had Google Alerts set up for his name. He would scroll through Twitter looking for mentions. It was like he was picking at a wound that wouldn't heal. Sarah looked up from her notes. That doesn't sound like the confident person we see in public. That's because the public person is an act. A very good act, but still an act. The real Elon is still that little boy checking to see if the pack is talking about him. Justine's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and frowned. The thing that broke my heart most was watching our children try to connect with him. They would want Daddy to play with them, to read them stories, to just be present. But he couldn't. He was always thinking about work, about Mars, about proving himself. Did your children know why? They just knew Daddy was always busy, always stressed. They learned not to ask for too much of his attention because they might not get it. Sarah felt sad thinking about 5 little boys trying to understand why their father couldn't focus on them. I tried to protect them from seeing his worst moments. The panic attacks before big presentations. The times he would lock himself in his office and not come out for days. The nights when he would pace around the house talking to himself about failures and enemies. Panic attacks? Oh, yes. Despite all his success, he was terrified of public speaking. Terrified of being judged. Before every Tesla event or SpaceX launch, he would be sick with anxiety. But he would force himself to do it anyway. Justine shook her head. People see his confidence on stage and think he's fearless. But I knew he was shaking inside. Still, that scared little boy, just with better acting skills. When did you realize the marriage wasn't going to work? When I understood that I wasn't just competing with his work for his attention. I was competing with his survival mechanism, and his survival mechanism was always going to win. Justine looked directly at Sarah. You can't love someone back to wholeness if they won't let you. And Elon couldn't let anyone get close enough to really help him. Getting close meant being vulnerable. And being vulnerable meant risking being hurt again. So what happened? By 2008, I felt like I was married to a stranger. Someone who looked like the man I had fallen in love with, but wasn't really there anymore. The character had taken over completely. Justine's voice grew heavy. That's when everything fell apart. And that's when I discovered what he was really planning for Mars. Sarah leaned forward in her chair. What happened in Justine got up and walked to a cabinet in the kitchen. She pulled out a thick folder filled with papers and brought it back to the table. 2008 was the year everything almost ended. Tesla was running out of money. SpaceX had failed 3 rocket launches in a row. Elon was facing complete failure for the first time since he was a child. She opened the folder and pulled out newspaper clippings from that year. The headlines were brutal. Tesla on the brink, SpaceX failures mount, Musk's empire crumbles. I watched him read these articles over and over. Each one was like a dagger to that wounded little boy inside him. He was becoming the pack all over again, telling him he was worthless. Sarah looked at the clippings. How did he handle it? At first, he tried to work even harder. 22-hour days. He would fall asleep at his desk and wake up there the next morning. He lost 30 pounds. His hands would shake when he tried to eat. Justine pulled out a photo from the folder. It showed Elon at some kind of business meeting. He looked terrible, thin, exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. This was taken in September 2008. He looks like a ghost, doesn't he? Sarah studied the photo. The confident billionaire she knew from TV was nowhere to be seen. This person looked broken. But the worst part wasn't the physical breakdown. It was watching him mentally fall apart. What do you mean? He started talking to himself. I would find him in his office at 3 in the morning having conversations with people who weren't there. Sometimes he was arguing with the pack from his childhood. Sometimes he was talking to his father defending himself. Justine's voice grew quiet. One night in October, I found him sitting on the floor of his office, surrounded by those childhood letters. He was reading them out loud and crying. What was he saying? He kept repeating they were right. They were right all along. I am worthless. I am broken. I can't do anything right. Sarah felt chills. What did you do? I tried to comfort him. I sat down next to him and held him while he cried. For about an hour, the mask was completely gone. He was just that scared 7-year-old boy again. Justine wiped away a tear. That should have been the moment when he got help. When he realized he needed therapy to deal with his trauma, but instead something else happened. What? He made a decision. Right there on the floor of his office, he decided that the problem wasn't his trauma. The problem was that he wasn't strong enough yet. He needed to become even more powerful. Justine pulled out a notebook from the folder. The cover was worn and the pages were filled with Elon's handwriting. He started writing in this notebook that night. Plans for how to make sure he would never feel powerless again. Sarah looked at the notebook. What kind of plans? The first few pages are about business. How to save Tesla and SpaceX. How to become so rich and powerful that no one could ever hurt him again. Justine flipped through the pages. But then it gets darker. Page after page about Mars. Not about saving humanity or advancing science. About escaping. She stopped at a page filled with diagrams and notes. Look at this. He drew out a timeline. By 2030, he wanted SpaceX to have regular flights to Mars. By 2035, he wanted a permanent base there. And by Justine's voice trailed off. By By 2040, he planned to leave Earth forever. This wasn't about building a colony and coming back to visit. This was about running away and never returning. Sarah stared at the notebook. Did he tell you about this plan? Not right away. For the next few months, he threw himself into saving his companies. He invested his last $1 million into Tesla. He worked even harder than before. And somehow, miraculously, both companies survived. That must have been a relief. You would think so. But success made everything worse. Justine turned to another page in the notebook. Once Tesla and SpaceX were stable, he started working on this Mars plan in secret. Late at night when he thought I was asleep, he would be in his office making calculations, designing spacecraft, planning supply routes. Did you confront him about it? In December 2008, I found him looking at real estate listings. Real estate. On Mars. No. On Earth. But not for buying. For selling. He was planning to sell everything we owned. Our house, our cars, everything. He wanted to put all of our money into the Mars project. Sarah's pen couldn't keep up with the story. That's when I realized how serious he was. This wasn't just a fantasy anymore. He was actually planning to spend our entire fortune on a one-way trip to Mars. What did you say to him? I asked him about our children. Our 5 boys. I said, Elon, what about them? Are you planning to take them to Mars too? Or are you planning to abandon them? Justine's voice grew angry. Do you know what he said? He said the boys would be better off without him. That he was too damaged to be a good father. That they deserved someone who could love them without being afraid. He was planning to leave his own children? In his mind, he was protecting them. He thought his trauma made him toxic. That the best thing he could do for people he loved was to disappear. Justine closed the notebook and put it back in the folder. That's when I knew our marriage was over. Not because he didn't love us, but because his plan to escape was more important than his plan to heal. Did you try to stop him? I tried everything. I begged him to go to therapy. I threatened to leave him if he didn't get help. I even contacted his mother and his brother Kimball to try to stage an intervention. What happened? Nothing worked. The closer he got to making his Mars dream real, the more distant he became from everyone on Earth. Including me. Justine looked out the window at her peaceful garden. By early 2008, I was living with a stranger who happened to look like my husband. Someone who was physically present but emotionally already on another planet. Is that when you decided to divorce him? That's when I realized I had 2 choices. I could stay married to someone who was planning to abandon our family, or I could leave and try to give our children some stability. Sarah could see the pain in Justine's eyes. The hardest part was that I still loved him. Not the character he had become, but the broken little boy underneath. But you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. How did he react when you asked for a divorce? He was almost relieved, like it was one less thing keeping him tied to Earth. Justine's voice grew bitter. Our divorce wasn't about money or custody. It was about him preparing for his great escape, and making sure nothing would stop him from leaving when the time came. Sarah looked up from her notepad. What do you mean it was about preparing for his escape? Justine opened the folder again and pulled out legal documents. They were divorce papers, but also other contracts and agreements that Sarah had never seen before. Most people think our divorce was complicated because of money. Elon was worth maybe $200 million then. But the money wasn't the hard part. She spread the papers across the kitchen table. The hard part was everything else he wanted to put in our divorce agreement. Things that had nothing to do with normal divorces. Sarah leaned forward to look at the documents. Like what? Like this. Justine pointed to a page marked with yellow highlighter. He wanted a clause saying that if he ever left Earth permanently, I couldn't stop him or claim abandonment. He put that in your divorce papers? He tried to. His lawyers thought he was crazy. They kept asking him why anyone would need a clause about leaving the planet. But Elon insisted. Justine turned to another page, and this one. He wanted to make sure that if he died on Mars, his body couldn't be brought back to Earth for burial. He wanted to stay there forever. Sarah stared at the documents. Did you agree to these clauses? Some of them. But only after I made him promise something in return. What? Justine walked to her kitchen counter and poured herself more coffee. Her hands were shaking slightly. I made him promise that he would wait until our youngest son turned 18 before he left for Mars. I wanted our boys to at least have a chance to know their father before he disappeared forever. Did he agree? Eventually. But only because Xavier, our youngest then, was just 4 years old. That gave Elon 14 more years to prepare his escape plan. Sarah did the math in her head. Xavier would turn 18 in Exactly. And guess what happened in Sarah felt a chill. What? SpaceX had its most successful year ever. They launched more rockets than any other company in history. Elon started talking publicly about sending humans to Mars within the next few years. Justine sat back down at the table. The promise I made him keep when our son was 4 years old? Time was almost up, but you said earlier that he's planning to leave Earth forever. How do you know that? Justine pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a text message. It was from February 2024, just a few weeks earlier. The message was from someone named Xavier Musk. It read, "Mom, I need to talk to you about something Dad told me. Can you call me tonight?" Xavier is 20 now. He called me that night and told me something that made my blood freeze. What did he say? He said Elon had taken him out to dinner. Just the two of them. He told Xavier that he was planning to be on the first permanent Mars colony mission. But not as a leader or a scientist. As a settler who would never come back. Sarah's pen stopped moving. He told his own son he was leaving forever? That's not the worst part. Xavier said Elon told him it would probably be his last time seeing his father. That dying on Mars was always part of the plan. Justine's voice grew angry. My son asked his father why he would choose to die on another planet instead of staying with his family. Do you know what Elon said? What? He said Earth was never really his home anyway. That he had always belonged somewhere else. That Mars was where people like him were supposed to be. Sarah felt sick. How did Xavier react? He was heartbroken. He asked his father if that meant he didn't love his children enough to stay. Elon told him love had nothing to do with it. That some people are just born in the wrong place. Justine wiped away tears that had started falling. Xavier called me crying. He said, "Mom, I think Dad has been planning to leave us our whole lives. I think everything he's built has been about getting away from us." What did you tell him? I told him the truth. About the trauma. About the letters. About the promise Elon made me on our wedding night. Xavier deserved to know why his father was choosing Mars over his family. Sarah looked at all the documents spread across the table. Is that why you decided to tell this story now? Partly. But there's more. Justin pulled out one last paper from the folder. It was a letter, but not one of the childhood letters. This one was typed and dated just 1 month ago. This came from Elon's lawyers. A cease and desist letter. Warning me not to contact him or discuss our marriage publicly. Why did he send that? Because I tried one more time to reach him. After Xavier told me about their dinner, I sent Elon one of his childhood letters. The one where he wrote about becoming someone new. Justine's voice grew hard. I included a note that said, "Do you remember who you were before you became who you are? Your sons need their father, not your character." What was his response? This legal threat. His lawyers said if I ever contacted him again or shared any personal information about him, they would sue me for everything I own. Sarah looked at the cease and desist letter. It was cold, formal, threatening. That's when I knew for certain that the boy I married was completely gone. The person who made me promise to keep his secret no longer existed. How do you know that? Because the real Elon, the hurt little boy I fell in love with, would never threaten the mother of his children. The character he created to survive, that person would do anything to protect his image. Justine gathered all the papers and put them back in the folder. I spent 15 years keeping his secret, protecting his privacy, helping him maintain his public image. I did it because I thought I was protecting someone I loved. But you don't think that anymore? I think that person died sometime between our divorce and now. What's left is just the survival mechanism he created. A brilliant, successful, powerful survival mechanism that's about to fulfill that scared little boy's ultimate fantasy. Sarah closed her notepad. Leaving Earth forever. Leaving Earth forever. And abandoning everyone who ever loved him in the process. Justine stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, her garden was peaceful and bright. The saddest part is that Mars won't heal him. You can't run away from trauma. It follows you wherever you go, even to other planets. Do you think he knows that? I think deep down he does. But the character he created is too strong now. It's taken over completely. The escape plan has become more real than the person who made it. Justine turned back to Sarah. That's why I'm telling you this story. Because maybe, just maybe, if enough people understand what's really driving Elon Musk, someone can help him see that healing is still possible, that he doesn't have to run away to be safe. Do you really think this story could change his mind? Justine smiled sadly. Probably not. But I owe it to that scared little boy to try. And I owe it to my sons to tell the truth about why their father chose Mars over them. Sarah gathered her notepad and pens. Can I ask you something personal? After everything I've told you? Ask away. What was it like watching him become famous after your divorce? Seeing him on TV, in magazines, knowing what you knew. Justine poured herself another cup of coffee and sat back down. It was like watching someone you once loved disappear completely into a lie. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through photos. Look at this. This is from 2010, 2 years after our divorce. The photo showed Elon at some kind of tech conference. He was smiling confidently, gesturing at a screen behind him showing rocket designs. To everyone else, he looked successful, happy, in control. But I could see what others couldn't. What did you see? The way his hands were clenched into fists. That's what he did when he was scared. The way his smile didn't reach his eyes. The way he stood, like he was ready to run at any moment. Justine scrolled to another photo from This one is from when SpaceX first docked with the International Space Station. Everyone was celebrating this huge achievement. But look at Elon's face. Sarah studied the photo. Elon was surrounded by cheering engineers, but his expression was strange. Not happy exactly. More like relieved. He wasn't celebrating success, Justine explained. He was celebrating another step closer to his escape plan. Did you ever try to contact him during those years? A few times. Usually when something happened with the boys that I thought he should know about. But he would respond through assistants or lawyers. Never directly. Justine's voice grew sad. It was like talking to a corporation instead of a person. Everything went through handlers and PR people. The man I married had completely disappeared behind this public image. Sarah looked at her notes. What about when he started dating other people? Tallulah Riley, Grimes, others. That was the hardest part to watch. Because I could see the same pattern happening with every relationship. What pattern? He would fall for someone, be vulnerable for a little while, then start pulling away as soon as they got too close. Every woman who loved him was fighting the same battle I fought, trying to love someone who couldn't let himself be loved. Justine showed Sarah another photo, this one from 2018. It showed Elon with Grimes at some red carpet event. Look at her face in this picture. See that look in her eyes? That's the look of someone who loves a person she can't really reach. Sarah could see what Justine meant. Grimes looked happy but also frustrated, like she was trying to connect with someone who wasn't fully there. Did any of them know about his childhood trauma? I don't think so. He got better and better at hiding it. By the time he was dating again, the character was so strong that maybe even he believed it was real. Justine put her phone away, but I could still see the scared little boy underneath. Especially during his worst public moments. Like what? The pedo guy thing in 2018. When he called that British diver a pedophile on Twitter for no reason. Sarah remembered that controversy. What did you see in that? A 7-year-old boy lashing out when someone criticized him. When that diver said Elon's submarine idea wouldn't work, it triggered the same response he had to the pack. Attack before you get attacked. Justine stood up and walked to a bookshelf. She pulled out a folder full of printed tweets. I started saving his worst tweets over the years. Not because I wanted to embarrass him, but because I could see the pattern. Every outburst, every strange comment, every fight he picked online, it all traced back to that hurt child. She showed Sarah some of the printed tweets. Look at this one from 2020. He tweeted Tesla's stock price is too high and wiped billions off the company's value. His board was furious. Investors were confused. But I knew what was really happening. What? He was sabotaging himself. It's something abuse victims do. When things are going too well, when they feel too safe, they unconsciously destroy it. Because deep down, they don't believe they deserve good things. Sarah read through more of the tweets. These don't sound like someone in control. Exactly, they sound like someone who's still fighting battles from 30 years ago. someone who sees enemies everywhere because that's how he survived as a child. Justine pulled out another printed article, and this one, from 2021, when he moved Tesla's headquarters from California to Texas. The official reason was taxes and regulations. But I knew the real reason, which was, he was running away again. California had too many memories, too many people who knew him when he was still vulnerable. Texas was a fresh start where he could be the character full-time. Sarah made notes about the pattern Justine was describing. What about his Twitter purchase in 2022? How did you see that? That was the scariest one for me. Because Twitter was where he fought most of his battles with critics and enemies. Buying it meant he could control the conversation completely. Justine's voice grew worried. It was like that little boy finally had enough power to silence the pack forever. But instead of healing, he was just creating a bigger echo chamber for his trauma responses. Did your sons notice these changes in their father? Oh yes, especially as they got older. Griffin asked me once why his dad seemed so angry all the time on social media. I didn't know what to tell him. Justine sat back down, looking tired. The boys would see him on TV, making these grand announcements about changing the world, then come home confused because the person they saw in public didn't match the distant, distracted father they knew. That must have been confusing for them. It was heartbreaking. They wanted to be proud of their father, but they also wanted him to just be their dad, to be present, to listen to them, to care about their problems as much as he cared about Mars. Sarah looked at all the evidence Justine had collected over the years. Photos, tweets, articles, legal documents. It painted a picture of someone who had achieved incredible success while becoming increasingly disconnected from reality. When did you realize he was completely lost to the character? 2023. When he started talking about X, the Everything app, he said he wanted to create a platform that would connect all of human communication. That sounds ambitious but not necessarily unhealthy. It wasn't about connecting humanity, it was about controlling it. About making sure he would never again be powerless against public opinion. Justine's voice grew quiet. That's when I knew the scared little boy's survival plan had won completely. He wasn't just planning to escape to Mars anymore. He was planning to control Earth until he left. Is that when you decided to tell this story? No. I decided when Xavier called me crying about their dinner conversation. When I realized Elon was actually going through with his plan to abandon his family. Justine looked out at her garden again. I've watched from the sidelines for 15 years, hoping he would heal. Hoping someone would reach that hurt child inside him. But time is running out. If SpaceX succeeds in their Mars missions, he'll be gone. Forever. Do you think this story will reach him? I don't know. But I have to try. Because somewhere under all that success and all that pain is still a little boy who just wanted to be safe and loved. Justine's voice was barely a whisper. And maybe, just maybe, that little boy is still listening. Sarah could see the pain in Justine's eyes. What finally made you decide to break your promise? After all these years of keeping his secret, Justine walked to her kitchen counter and pulled out a tablet. She tapped the screen a few times, then showed it to Sarah. This interview, February 12, 2020. On the screen was a video of Elon sitting across from a famous news anchor. He looked confident, relaxed, smiling. The headline read, "Elon Musk, no regrets, no looking back." Watch this part, Justine said, fast-forwarding to a specific moment. The interviewer was asking Elon about his childhood in South Africa. Do you ever wish anything had been different about your early years? Elon's answer made Sarah's stomach drop. Not at all. I've always been exactly who I am today. My childhood made me strong. I have no regrets about anything. I've always known I was meant for something bigger than Earth. Justine paused the video. Did you hear that? He said he's always been exactly who he is today. But that's not true based on everything you've told me. Exactly. That's when I knew the little boy was completely gone. He had rewritten his own history. The person who made me promise to keep his secret no longer existed. Justine set the tablet down and leaned against the counter. For 15 years, I protected his privacy because I thought I was protecting someone I loved. But watching that interview, I realized I was protecting a lie. Sarah looked at her notes. What did you do after you saw it? I called my son Damien. He's 17 now, almost the same age Elon was when he left South Africa. I asked him if he had seen his father's interview. What did Damien say? He said, "Mom, Why does Dad always talk like he's perfect? Like nothing bad ever happened to him? We know that's not true. Justine's voice grew stronger. That's when I realized I wasn't just protecting Elon anymore. I was lying to his own children about who their father really was. They deserve to understand why he acts the way he does. So you decided to reach out to him one more time? Yes. I thought maybe if I reminded him of who he used to be, he might remember. Maybe the real Elon was still in there somewhere. Justine walked back to the folder of documents and pulled out a photocopy of one of the childhood letters. I sent him this one. The letter where 7-year-old Elon wrote about becoming someone new to survive. I included a note. What did the note say? Do you remember who you were before you became who you are? Your sons need their father, not your character. Sarah waited for Justine to continue. I thought maybe, just maybe, seeing his own words from when he was hurt and honest might break through the walls he's built. How long did you wait for a response? 3 days. I kept checking my phone, hoping he might call or text, hoping he might remember the promise he made to that scared little boy to never forget where he came from. Justine's laugh was bitter. Instead, I got a call from his lawyer. What did they say? That Mr. Musk considered my contact harassment, that if I ever tried to reach him again or discussed our marriage publicly, they would sue me for violation of our divorce agreement. Sarah felt angry on Justine's behalf. That must have been devastating. It was worse than devastating. It was final proof that the person I married was dead. Justine sat back down at the kitchen table. The real Elon, the vulnerable person who shared his deepest trauma with me, would never have threatened the mother of his children. He would have been hurt, maybe angry, but he wouldn't have sent lawyers. So you knew the character had taken over completely. Completely. And that's when I realized something terrible. Sarah looked up from her notepad. What? I had been an accomplice. For 15 years, I helped him maintain his public image by keeping quiet about his trauma. I enabled him to avoid dealing with his pain. Justine's voice grew emotional. By protecting his secret, I was protecting his sickness. I was helping him stay broken instead of helping him heal. You were honoring a promise you made to someone you loved. But that someone was gone. I was keeping a promise to a ghost while a damaged person used my silence to hurt other people. Sarah didn't understand. How was he hurting other people? His employees who work 100-hour weeks because he can't face his own pain. His children who can't have a real relationship with their father. The investors who don't know they're funding someone's escape plan instead of a real business vision. Justine stood up and walked to the window again. And all the people who look up to him who think his success story is about genius and hard work, when it's really about unhealed trauma driving someone to exhaustion. Is that when you decided to call that reporter from The Atlantic? Not yet. I made one last attempt to reach the real Elon. How? Through Griffin, our oldest son. He's 20 now, old enough to understand everything. I told him the truth about his father's childhood and asked him to try talking to Elon. What happened? Griffin called his father and said he wanted to understand him better. He asked about South Africa, about what it was like growing up there. Justine's voice grew sad. Elon told Griffin the same lie he told that interviewer. That his childhood was fine, that it made him strong, that he had no complaints. Even to his own son? Even to his own son. Griffin came back to me confused and hurt. He said, "Mom, why won't Dad tell me the truth? Why does he lie to us about everything?" Sarah could see why this would be the breaking point. That's when I knew I had to speak out. Not to hurt Elon, but to give his children the truth about their father. To help them understand that his distance isn't about them. It's about wounds that never heal. Justine turned from the window to face Sarah directly. I realized that keeping Elon's secret was hurting the people I was supposed to protect most. Our sons. How do you think they'll react when this story comes out? They'll finally understand why their father seems so afraid of loving them. Why he keeps everyone at arm's length. Why Mars has always been more important to him than Earth. Justine's voice grew determined. And maybe, just maybe, understanding his story will help them heal from the damage his trauma has caused them. Do you think this will change anything for Elon? Probably not. The character he created is too strong now. But I had to try, for the sake of that scared little boy who's trapped inside a billionaire's delusions. Justine looked at Sarah seriously. And for the sake of everyone who doesn't understand that following Elon Musk means following someone who's still running away from a playground bully from 30 years ago. Sarah looked at her watch. They had been talking for over 2 hours, but she felt like they were just getting to the heart of the story. You keep mentioning Mars as his escape plan. Can you tell me exactly what he said about it? What his real intentions are? Justin walked back to the wooden box and pulled out a different notebook. This one was newer, with a black cover. This is from 2005, 3 years into our marriage. Elon had been having nightmares again, really bad ones. He would wake up screaming about being trapped underground. She opened the notebook to a page filled with drawings and notes. One night, after a particularly bad nightmare, he couldn't go back to sleep. I found him in his office drawing these. Sarah looked at the page. It showed detailed sketches of spacecraft, but also something else. Pictures of a small house on what looked like a barren landscape. What are these drawings? His dream home on Mars. But look closer. Sarah studied the drawings more carefully. The house was tiny, isolated, with no other buildings around it. There was a single figure standing outside, alone. He wasn't drawing a colony or a city. He was drawing a place to hide. Exactly, and look at this note he wrote at the bottom. Sarah read the handwritten words. Finally safe. No pack. No bullies. No one who knows my real name. Just me and the stars. This wasn't about advancing human civilization, Justine continued. This was about finding the ultimate hiding place. Did he tell you more about this plan? Over the years, yes. Usually when he was feeling vulnerable or scared, he would talk about Mars like other people talk about retirement. Justine turned to another page in the notebook. Look at this timeline he made. The page showed a detailed plan spanning 30 years. It started with build wealth and develop technology and ended with leave Earth forever age. He had it all figured out. Make enough money to fund his own space program. Develop the technology to get to Mars. Then use both to escape everything that hurt him on Earth. Sarah felt chills reading the timeline. This is incredibly detailed. That's because it wasn't just a fantasy for him. It was a survival plan. As real and necessary as having food and shelter. Justine showed Sarah more pages from the notebook. He wrote about what life would be like on Mars. No media to criticize him. No business competitors to fight. No childhood memories around every corner. What about other people? Did he plan to be completely alone? That's the saddest part. He wrote about maybe having a small group of people with him, but only people who didn't know his history. People who would see him as a pioneer, not as someone running away. Sarah looked at a page titled Mars Rules. He made rules for his Mars life? Read them. Sarah read aloud. Rule 1. No Earth communication except emergencies. Rule 2. No Earth visitors. Rule 3. No discussion of Earth life or Earth problems. Rule 4. Only forward-looking conversations about Mars' future. He was planning to completely cut himself off from his past. And from his children. Look at Rule 5. Sarah's voice caught as she read. Rule 5. No family contact that might create guilt about leaving Earth. He was planning to abandon his own sons permanently. In his mind, he was protecting them. He believed his trauma made him toxic to everyone he loved. He thought the kindest thing he could do was disappear. Justine's voice grew angry. But what he never understood was that running away doesn't heal trauma. It just spreads the damage to more people. Did he ever talk about coming back to visit? Never. He always said it would be too painful. That seeing Earth again would bring back all the memories he was trying to escape. Sarah flipped through more pages of the notebook. Every entry was about Mars. Plans for growing food, building shelter, creating a completely self-sufficient life. This is like reading someone's detailed suicide note, except instead of dying, he's planning to disappear to another planet. That's exactly what it is, psychological suicide. The complete death of Elon Musk Earth person and the birth of Elon Musk Mars colonist. Justin took the notebook back and closed it. The most heartbreaking part is that he really believed this would work, that 140 million miles of space would be enough distance to outrun childhood trauma. What did you say when he shared these plans with you? I tried to talk him out of it. I suggested therapy, meditation, anything that might help him heal on Earth. But he would always say the same thing, which was that Earth would never be safe for him. That as long as he stayed here, he would always be that scared little boy waiting for the pack to find him. Sarah made notes about everything Justine was telling her. When did you realize he was serious about actually doing this? 2016, when SpaceX successfully landed their first rocket booster. I watched the news coverage, and while everyone else was celebrating the technology breakthrough, I knew what it really meant. What? It meant his escape plan was becoming real. Every successful launch, every new rocket design, every contract with NASA, it was all bringing him closer to his ultimate goal. Did you try to stop him then? How do you stop someone from pursuing their life's work? Especially when that work is disguised as saving humanity. Justine stood up and walked to her kitchen window. Outside, an airplane was flying overhead, leaving a white trail across the blue sky. The genius of his plan was that it looked noble. Who would question someone wanting to make humans a multi-planetary species? Who would argue against advancing space technology? But you knew the real reason. I knew it was all about running away. Every rocket launch was practice for his personal escape. Every Mars mission plan was really about his psychological exit strategy. Sarah looked at all her notes. This puts everything in a different context. It should, because what the world sees as visionary leadership is actually the most elaborate avoidance behavior in human history. Justine turned back from the window. Elon Musk isn't trying to save humanity. He's trying to save himself, and he's convinced millions of people to fund his therapy. What do you think will happen when he actually gets to Mars? He'll discover what every person running from trauma discovers eventually. You can't outrun your own mind. The scared little boy will still be there, just on a different planet. Justine's voice grew sad. But by then, it will be too late. He'll be too far away for anyone on Earth to help him, and too proud to admit he made a mistake. Do you think this story will change his mind? I hope it will make people think twice before they follow him to Mars. Because they won't be following a visionary. They'll be following someone's 40-year escape plan. Justine looked directly at Sarah. And maybe, just maybe, it will help Elon realize that healing is still possible. That he doesn't have to run away to be safe. Sarah put down her pen for a moment. I need to ask you something difficult. You've talked about how his trauma affected your marriage and his business decisions. But what about his relationship with your children? How has this affected them? Justine's face grew heavy with sadness. She walked to a photo on her kitchen counter. A picture of 5 young boys at a beach, all smiling and building sandcastles. This was taken in 2006. Look at their faces. They're so happy, so innocent. They had no idea their father was planning to leave them someday. How old were they then? Griffin and Xavier were 2. Damien, Saxon, and Kai were 4. Just babies, really. At that age, they worshipped their dad. He was this amazing person who built rockets and fast cars. Justine touched the photo gently. But as they got older, they started noticing things. Why Daddy was always working. Why he seemed nervous around other people. Why he would get upset about things they read online. Did they ask you about it? All the time. Especially Griffin. He's the most observant. When he was 8, he asked me why his father never talked about being a kid in South Africa. Sarah made notes. What did you tell him? I tried to protect Elon's privacy while still being honest with my son. I said Daddy had some difficult times when he was young, and that's why he worked so hard now. Justine sat back down at the table. But kids are smart. They could see that other fathers weren't like theirs. Other dads played games, told jokes, relaxed sometimes. Their father was always intense, always thinking about work. How did that affect them? They learned not to ask for too much attention. They learned that Daddy's work was more important than their soccer games or school plays. They learned to be very, very good so they wouldn't add to his stress. Sarah felt her heart breaking for these children. That must have been incredibly painful for them. It was. And the worst part was that Elon couldn't see it. He thought he was being a good father by working hard to secure their future. He didn't understand that they needed him present, not just successful. Justine pulled out another photo. This one from Look at this one. This is from Xavier's birthday party. See how Elon is standing apart from everyone else? Even at his own son's party, he couldn't fully engage. In the photo, Elon was indeed standing at the edge of the group, looking at his phone while the children played. He was always half gone, even when he was physically there. Part of him was already on Mars. Did the boys ever confront him about this? Damien did when he turned 13. He asked his father directly why space was more important than family. What did Elon say? He gave Damien the same speech he gives everyone. About making humanity multiplanetary, about securing the future, about doing important work. Justine's voice grew frustrated. Damien came to me crying afterwards. He said, "Mom, I don't care about Mars, I just want my dad to care about me." Sarah stopped writing for a moment. That's heartbreaking. That's when I realized the full cost of Elon's survival mechanism. It wasn't just affecting him anymore. It was damaging our children. How so? They started believing that love was conditional, that they had to achieve great things to be worthy of attention, that showing emotions or needs was weakness. Justine stood up and paced around the kitchen. Griffin became obsessed with grades, thinking that if he was smart enough, his father would notice him. Xavier became very quiet, afraid that speaking up would upset Daddy. The younger boys started acting out, trying to get any kind of reaction from their father. Did you try to compensate for Elon's emotional absence? I tried, but I was just one person. And I was dealing with my own pain from watching the man I loved disappear into his trauma response. Sarah looked at her notes. You mentioned earlier that Elon thought his trauma made him toxic to his children. Did he ever say that directly? Many times. He would say things like, "They're better off without me around too much. I don't want to damage them with my problems." But by pulling away, he was damaging them anyway. Exactly, but he couldn't see that. In his mind, emotional distance was protection. He was doing to his own children what he wished someone had done for him. Keeping the damaged person away. Justine sat back down, looking exhausted. The tragedy is that our boys needed to know their father's story. They needed to understand that his distance wasn't about them. It was about his own wounds. But you couldn't tell them because of your promise to keep his secret. Right? So they grew up thinking they weren't good enough, interesting enough, important enough to hold their father's attention. Sarah felt angry on behalf of these children. That's a terrible burden for kids to carry. It gets worse. As they became teenagers, they started seeing their father's public persona. This confident, successful man who could inspire millions of people but couldn't connect with his own sons. How did they handle that contradiction? Griffin started researching his father online, trying to understand who Elon really was. He found articles, interviews, tweets. He became obsessed with trying to decode his father's behavior. Justine pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a text message from Griffin. This is from last year. Griffin was 19 then. The message read, "Mom, I think Dad might be sick. Not physically, but mentally. The way he acts online isn't normal. Should I be worried about him?" What did you tell him? I told him that his father had some difficult experiences growing up that still affected him. But I couldn't tell him the whole truth because of my promise. That must have been incredibly frustrating. It was torture. Watching my children blame themselves for their father's emotional unavailability when I knew the real reason. Justine put her phone away. Xavier had it the worst. He's always been sensitive, empathetic. He took Elon's distance very personally. How so? When Xavier was 16, he legally changed his name. He didn't want to be associated with Elon anymore. Sarah looked up from her notepad. He changed his name? To Vivian. He's transgender. But that wasn't the only reason for the name change. He told me he couldn't bear carrying the name of someone who made him feel invisible. Did Elon know why Xavier changed his name? I tried to explain it to him. I said Xavier felt rejected, abandoned, unloved. But Elon just said Xavier was going through a phase and would understand when he was older. Justine's voice grew bitter. He couldn't see that his own child was in pain because of his emotional absence. He was so focused on his Mars escape plan that he missed his child crying for help right in front of him. Is that when you realized you had to speak out? That was part of it. But the final straw was when I realized that Elon's wealth and success meant nothing if it came at the cost of his children's mental health. Sarah looked at all the family photos scattered around Justine's kitchen. Happy children who had grown into confused, hurt young adults. What do you hope will happen when this story comes out? I hope my sons will finally understand that their father's distance isn't their fault, that they're not broken or unlovable, that their father's inability to connect comes from his own wounds, not from anything they did or didn't do. Justine gathered the photos together. And I hope other people will understand what we're really celebrating when we cheer for Elon's success. We're cheering for someone's very expensive therapy, paid for by everyone who believes in his vision. Do you think your sons will be okay? They're strong, intelligent young men. But they'll need therapy to undo the damage of growing up with a father who couldn't love them the way they deserved. Justine looked directly at Sarah. That's another cost of keeping trauma secrets. It doesn't just hurt the person with the trauma, it hurts everyone who loves them. For generations. Sarah looked at her watch. They had been talking for hours, and her notepad was almost full, but she sensed they were approaching the biggest revelation yet. Justine, you've told me about the childhood trauma, the Mars escape plan, the effect on your children, but you said earlier that Elon is planning to leave Earth permanently soon. How do you know that? Justine walked to her kitchen drawer and pulled out a folder marked confidential. Her hands were shaking as she opened it. What I'm about to show you. This is why I finally broke my promise. This is why I called that reporter 3 days ago. She pulled out a document with the SpaceX logo at the top. It was dated January 15, 2024, exactly 24 years after their wedding night. How did you get a SpaceX document? Damien works there. He's an engineer, just like his father always wanted. Last month, he was assigned to a project called Permanent Settlement Initiative. Sarah read the title of the document, Project Exodus, Single Direction Mars Transportation for Primary Colonists. What is this? It's Elon's real Mars plan. Not the public version about building a city and coming back to Earth. This is about people who will never return. Justine pointed to a section highlighted in yellow. Read this part. Under Mission Parameters. Sarah read aloud. Transportation will be optimized for one-way travel. Return fuel and equipment will not be included to maximize payload capacity for permanent settlement supplies. One-way travel? Keep reading. Primary colonist selection will prioritize individuals with essential skills who have minimal Earth attachments and strong psychological profiles for permanent isolation from home planet. Sarah looked up. Minimal Earth attachments? That's Elon. He's planning to be the primary colonist, the first person to leave Earth forever. How do you know he's planning to go himself? Justine flipped to another page in the document. Damien highlighted this section for me. Look at the timeline. The timeline showed launch dates starting in 2026, with something called Alpha Mission scheduled for What's Alpha Mission? According to this document, it's the first permanent settlement mission. Led by company founder, that's how they refer to Elon in internal documents. Sarah felt her heart racing. He's really planning to leave, and that's less than 3 years away. And look at this. Justine showed Sarah another section titled Earth Communication Protocols. It says communication with Earth will be limited to quarterly status reports for the first 5 years, then annually after that. Eventually, all Earth communication will cease to preserve mission's psychological independence. He's planning to cut off all contact with his children. Not just planning. He's already started. Justine pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a series of text messages from her sons. These are from the last 2 months. Griffin, Damien, Saxon, Kai. They've all tried to reach their father. Look at the response times. Sarah scrolled through the messages. Each son had texted their father about important things, college decisions, relationship problems, career questions. Some messages had no response at all. Others had replies that came weeks later with just a few words. He's already emotionally leaving Earth. Exactly, and there's more. Justine pulled out a legal document from the folder. This is a will amendment that Elon filed last month. He's transferring all his Earth assets to a trust managed by his companies. He's not planning to own anything on this planet anymore. What about his children's inheritance? They'll get money, but only through the trust. No direct access to their father or his personal assets. Sarah stared at the documents. This is really happening. It gets worse. Damien told me something else he overheard at SpaceX. What? Elon has been telling key employees that the Alpha mission is a life completion project, that whoever goes on it should consider their Earth life finished. Justine's voice broke. My ex-husband is planning to commit psychological suicide on Mars, and he's disguising it as human advancement. Did Damien try to talk to his father about this? He tried. Elon told him that some people are meant to be pioneers, and pioneers don't look back. How did Damien react? He came to me crying. A 20-year-old man crying because his father would rather die on Mars than stay on Earth with his children. Sarah felt sick. What did you tell him? I told him the truth, everything. About the childhood trauma, about the pack, About the wedding night confession, Damien deserved to know why his father was choosing Mars over his family. How did he handle learning about Elon's childhood? He was angry at first, angry that I had kept the secret so long. But then he understood. He said, "Mom, that explains everything. Dad isn't trying to advance humanity. He's trying to escape his own mind." Justine sat back down at the table. That's when Damien showed me these SpaceX documents. He said if Dad is really leaving forever, people should know why. They should know they're funding someone's therapy, not human progress. Is that when you decided to call the reporter? That's when I realized I had a moral obligation, not just to my children, but to everyone who believes in Elon's vision. Sarah looked at all the evidence spread across the table. Childhood letters, divorce documents, SpaceX plans, psychological evaluations. This changes everything. It should. Because what the world sees as visionary leadership is actually the final stage of a very elaborate escape plan created by a traumatized 7-year-old. What do you hope happens when this story comes out? I hope someone at SpaceX will intervene. I hope his board will recognize that their CEO is making business decisions based on childhood trauma, not rational planning. Justine's voice grew stronger. And I hope Elon will realize that healing is still possible, that he doesn't have to run away to Mars to be safe. Do you really think this story could change his mind? Maybe not. But I had to try. Because in 3 years it might be too late. What do you mean? If he gets on that rocket to Mars, he'll be gone forever. And that scared little boy who just wanted to be loved will die alone on another planet, having never learned that he was worth saving. Justine looked directly at Sarah. I broke my promise to protect a secret because keeping it was enabling someone I once loved to destroy himself in the most expensive way possible. And you wanted the world to know the real cost of his Mars dream. The real cost isn't just money or resources. The cost is a human soul that chose to run away instead of heal. And the cost is 5 sons who will spend the rest of their lives knowing their father chose an empty planet over their love. Sarah closed her notepad. She had enough material for a dozen articles. What happens now? Now you tell the world the truth about Elon Musk. And maybe, just maybe, someone will be able to reach him before it's too late. Justine gathered all the documents and put them back in the folder. The scared little boy is still in there somewhere. Under all the success, all the fame, all the plans to escape. And he's still worth saving. Sarah gathered her notepads, but she could see Justine wasn't finished. There was something else in her expression, a final weight she needed to lift. "There's one more thing," Justine said quietly. "Something I haven't told you yet. The deepest secret of all." "What is it?" Justine walked to the wooden box one last time. From the very bottom, underneath all the letters, she pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was different from the others, older, more fragile, written in crayon that had faded to almost nothing. This letter was never sent to Kimball. Elon wrote it the night he was locked in that basement for 3 hours. But he was too scared to mail it. Sarah took the paper carefully. The writing was barely visible, scrawled by a terrified 7-year-old in the dark. "Can you read it?" Sarah squinted at the faded words. Some of it says, "Dear Kimball, I'm trapped in the dark. I can't get out. I think I'm going to die here. Keep reading. I'm so scared. I don't want to die alone. I made up a story to make myself feel better. I pretended that aliens came to save me. They took me to their planet where kids like me are safe." Sarah looked up. He created a fantasy to survive the trauma? That's not the important part. Keep reading. Sarah continued, struggling with the faded crayon marks. "The aliens told me I belong with them. They said Earth kids are mean because Earth is broken. They said someday I can come home to their planet and never be hurt again." He was imagining rescue by aliens? Read the last part. Sarah found the final lines. "The alien planet is red like Mars. When I grow up, I'm going to build a rocket and go there. The aliens are waiting for me to come home." Sarah set the letter down, understanding flooding through her. Mars isn't his destination, it's his childhood fantasy made real. Exactly. In that basement, a terrified 7-year-old boy convinced himself that aliens from Mars would save him. His entire space program isn't about advancing humanity. It's about making his survival fantasy come true. Justine sat down across from Sarah. Everything he's achieved, Tesla, SpaceX, his fortune, It's all been in service of getting back to the imaginary aliens who rescued him in his darkest moment. But he doesn't really believe in aliens now, does he? I don't think he knows what he believes anymore. The fantasy became so real to him, so necessary for his survival, that it merged with his adult goals. Sarah stared at the faded letter. This explains everything. It explains why Mars is so important to him that he'd abandon his own children. It explains why no amount of success on Earth feels like enough. It explains why he talks about Mars like it's calling him home. Because in his mind, it is home. In his mind, Mars is where he belongs. Earth is just the place where he was tortured and had to pretend to be someone else. Justine's voice grew sad. The richest man in the world is still that little boy waiting for aliens to take him home. And he's spent billions of dollars making that childhood delusion come true. Sarah felt the full weight of the story now. So when he gets to Mars, he'll be looking for the aliens who saved him in his imagination. And when he doesn't find them, when he realizes he's alone on an empty planet, the fantasy that kept him alive for 40 years will finally die. Along with him. Because without that fantasy, without that hope of belonging somewhere, he has nothing left. Justine carefully put the letter back in the wooden box. That's the real secret, Sarah. The man the world sees as humanity's savior is actually a lost little boy who never learned that he belonged right here on Earth, with people who love him. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Because it's the saddest part of the whole story. It means his Mars plan isn't just an escape, it's a slow suicide disguised as human advancement. Sarah closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the tragedy of it all. What do you want people to do with this information? I want them to understand that following Elon Musk to Mars means following someone's childhood delusion. I want them to know that the technology he's building comes from trauma, not vision. And what about Elon himself? I want him to know that it's not too late to heal. That he doesn't need aliens to save him. That the love he's looking for on Mars is available right here on Earth. From his own children. Justine stood up and walked to her kitchen window one last time. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, the same colors as Mars. But mostly, I want him to know that the scared little boy who wrote that letter is still worth saving. That he doesn't have to die on Mars to feel safe. Do you really think this story will reach him? I don't know. The character he's created is so strong now, so convinced that Mars is the answer. But somewhere underneath all that success and all that pain is still a 7-year-old who just wanted someone to come save him. Sarah packed her notepads into her bag. She had the story of a lifetime, one that would change how the world saw Elon Musk forever. What happens next? Next, you write the truth. And maybe, just maybe, someone reading it will recognize that they're watching the final act of a very long tragedy. And maybe they'll try to stop it. Or maybe Elon will read it himself and remember who he was before he became who he is now. Maybe he'll remember that little boy who just wanted to feel safe and loved. Justine walked Sarah to the door. The aliens aren't coming to save him, Sarah. They never were. But healing is still possible right here on Earth if he's brave enough to stop running. As Sarah drove away from Justine's house, she looked up at the evening sky. Somewhere up there was Mars, a red planet that a broken billionaire saw as home. But down here on Earth was a family that still loved him. If only he could find the courage to stay. The story was over, but Sarah knew the real ending was still unwritten. In less than 3 years, Elon Musk would either find healing on Earth or die alone on Mars, chasing aliens who existed only in a scared child's imagination. The choice was still his to make. That was the end of Justine Musk's shocking revelation about the secret that shaped one of the world's most powerful men. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. Your engagement helps us reach more people with these important truths. If this opened your eyes to a different side of Elon Musk, please hit that like button. It really helps our channel grow and brings these eye-opening revelations to more viewers. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell for more fascinating exposés that reveal the hidden truths behind famous figures. We uncover the real people behind the public masks. Most importantly, share this video with your friends and family. When we understand the pain behind powerful people's actions, we can spread more kindness and awareness in our own lives. Together, we can create a world where healing matters more than hiding. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.